So today we need to talk about and break down what I believe is going to be one of the most intriguing recruiting battles in the entirety of the class of 2024. A battle for a top 5 player in the nation regardless of position and the number 1 edge rusher in the nation, Colin Simmons. And Colin Simmons is currently plotting out his spring visits, and your favorite institution may just be set to receive one of those visits. Before we can break all of this down, y'all know the drill. I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no, and given that two of the institutions courting Colin Simmons the hardest are Texas and Texas A&M, do you believe the 5-star edge rusher plays his collegiate ball in the state of Texas? And let me know what you're thinking. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed this content, be sure to like and comment down below. Those interactions seem small, but they are massive, and we're on a push to 20,000 subscribers. I'd love to have you a part of this unbelievable community. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And before we can get into the teams that are courting Colin Simmons, we need to ask the question, who is Colin Simmons? Well, Colin Simmons is easily one of the most gifted prospects in a class loaded with gifted prospects. Seriously, check out this 2024 recruiting class, and if you have needs, this is just as good of a recruiting class to fill those needs as any in recent memory, specifically on the defensive side of the ball and that defensive front, where if you need defensive linemen or edge rushers, this class has got you covered. And Colin Simmons is mentioned among the best of them. He's the number 1 edge rusher in the nation. He's the number 4 player in the nation, and he plays his high school football with Duncanville High School. And just the other day, I talked about a prospect who was crystal balled to Oklahoma who plays high school football with Duncanville. And one of the points I was making is whenever you have an individual that comes from a high school like Duncanville, like IMG, like Modern Day, these guys are battle tested. They're battle tested because they're practicing against other college football players. They're battle tested because they're playing against other high schools that have college football players on those teams. So the translation from high school to college, in theory, is a little bit more assured whenever you get guys that come from these institutions that are so battle tested. Make no mistake, nothing is guaranteed, but at least in theory, it makes a more linear transition when you've already been going up against guys who will be playing college football. But I digress. Let's jump into the teams that are courting Colin Simmons, because his busy spring kicks off this weekend as he's set to take a visit to Arizona State. And I am so interested in the Sun Devils right now. Kenny Dillingham takes over that program, and if you've been around the channel, you may have heard me talk about Arizona State and how I really felt bad for that program. I've used Jaden Daniels as a great example where I was so excited for his future whenever he burst onto the scene as a freshman, but because of all the chaos that happened at Arizona State, how in the world are you supposed to judge Jaden Daniels or any player on that team? They're trying to be a student athlete. They're trying to continue progressing as a college football player, and they have this proverbial cloud hanging over their head. It's impossible to judge them and see how they're going to continue progressing when there's so much weighing them down. That's why I was so stoked to see him transfer to LSU and see him succeed, because I just thought that was an individual who needed to get out of that situation. Well, now that situation looks to be turned around, and Kenny Dillingham enters into the equation, and he has got his work cut out for him. It is not going to be an easy fix, but one thing I love he did, he has made 2 hires that I've highlighted that I think are about as big of slam dunk hires as we've seen this offseason. Getting Rashad Samples and getting Brian Carrington, because both of those individuals have strong ties to the state of Texas and they are regarded as elite recruiters. And in Rashad Samples' case, he has direct ties to Duncanville because I believe his father is the coach of Duncanville High School, which puts them in an interesting position. Like I said though, there's a lot of work that Arizona State is going to have to do, but make no mistake, that is a team I am so excited to watch this upcoming season. The next team we have to talk about is the in-state team, the Texas Longhorns, and this would be a massive win for the Longhorns. There is no way around this. First and foremost, you'd get to keep the number 1 player in your state home. And we talk about this all the time. Recruiting is far too national for you to win every battle in your state, but it's about winning the battles you can't afford to lose. And Colin Simmons is a battle where I'm not claiming that Texas can't afford to lose this battle, but at the same time, if you break down that Texas Longhorns defense, PK needs guys like Colin Simmons to really maximize what he wants to do schematically. Those edge positions, that Jack and X outside linebacker position, that's the real meat of where PK's scheme derives from. Texas Homer has got a fantastic video on this, really breaking down the ins and outs of PK's scheme. If you haven't seen it, by all means, go over there, subscribe to his channel. He makes fantastic content, but it really proves the point of why an individual such as a Colin Simmons would be so big to that defense. Texas has done a phenomenal job in recruiting to needs since Steve Sarkisian has got there. I've defended the Texas Longhorns against people on the outside who say, yes, but they have always recruited well, but they have not always recruited with purpose. And that's something Steve Sarkisian and this staff are really addressing. When they first got there, the offensive line was in shambles. They needed all the help they could get, and Kyle Flood signed an incredible offensive line class on the heels of the one he just assembled for the Alabama Crimson Tide, the class that I was saying might have been the best offensive line class I've seen assembled in recent memory. Well, then he went and doubled down and did the exact same thing with the Texas Longhorns. Fast forward 1 year later, we talked about in the summer. We sat down on a video and talked, and I asked all of you, what's the biggest position of need for the Texas Longhorns recruiting? You all pointed me to two positions, one of which I absolutely agreed with. The other one, I really didn't have in my mind at that time, but all of you were 100% right to point this one out to me. We all agreed on the linebacker. You guys pointed out the defensive line and the interior of that defensive line. Not that that was a major concern, but that you needed to continue adding that depth. I hadn't been thinking about the interior defensive line, but when I sat down and looked at it, y'all were 100% right. Good on y'all. But that linebacker, you needed to get an elite linebacker, and you got the number one inside linebacker in the nation who, oh yeah, by the way, played for Denton Ryan High School in your state. Can you double down? Can you go from needing offensive lineman and getting a great offensive line class to needing an inside linebacker and getting the best inside linebacker in the nation, and then getting the number one guy at his position that is so key to the scheme PK is employing? This is something we have got to watch, but so too do we have to watch the next team, Texas A&M, because Texas A&M has been recruiting that defensive front as well as anybody in the nation, and this is a truth we just have to accept. Even in a year where they lost several guys to the transfer portal, when we look at what they were able to retain, that is still a ferocious defensive line, one I'm actually very excited to see. Now, Texas A&M has got a big year in front of them. I think we've talked about this several times, but I'm interested in seeing how this could impact recruiting, because you can only go so long selling promises but not delivering on those promises. And in no way, shape, or form am I saying Jimbo Fisher and A&M are just flat out not delivering on promises. But at the same time, you can only sell to these kids, we're going to compete with Bama. We're going to compete with Georgia on a year-in, year-out basis, and then be, at best, a middle-of-the-pack SEC team. That's not a winning model whenever it comes to recruiting, and A&M has the talent. We have seen A&M, even with Jimbo Fisher, put together really good years where they are absolutely where they claim to be. But coming off of the year they just had with the recruiting class they just had, this is a really big year for the Aggies. And if they're able to start turning some things around, watch out. We already know they recruit at such an elite level. And if they go out there and show, hey, there's a reason for you to be excited about our team. We have some young guys in some positions of major need, aka the quarterback position. If they go out there, put together a really impressive year, their recruiting could just take off. So A&M is absolutely a team we need to watch, because it's almost a double-edged sword with the Aggies right now. If they do really well, it will help boom their recruiting, and they don't need too much help there anyways. If they don't do well, it could really hurt their recruiting. The next team on this list is really interesting to me, and it's USC, because we've talked about this time and time again. When it comes to USC, I have no doubt that Lincoln Riley's offense is going to be able to carry them to success and maybe even get them to a college football playoff game. Heck, they were 2 games away this year, so it is not beyond the pale to say they could make the college football playoffs. They have a very gifted quarterback, and it's Lincoln Riley's offensive system. We know he knows how to call an offensive game plan. The problem is, and it's a point I maintain until I'm going to be proven wrong, you cannot have a complete disregard for one side of the football and win national championships. And until I'm proven wrong, I am going to hammer home that point every chance I get. Which really brings me to this conversation with USC. If there was a side of the ball, if I was USC, that I would put first and foremost on my recruiting big board, it's defense. Forget a position, it's defense. We need safeties. We need corners. We need linebackers. We need edge. We need interior defensive line. We need the whole shebang. We don't need a group. We need it all. And what a better way to kick it off than with Colin Simmons. Because if USC figures out that defensive side of the ball, and I'm not even claiming they have to be a top 10 defense, if they can maintain a top 20 defense, that's going to be a scary team. You don't have to have the best defense, but you cannot have any regard for defense to win a national championship. And USC is a team that if they start recruiting the defensive side of the ball the way they recruit the offensive side of the ball, people will be put on notice. Winding down to our final few teams, we have the Florida Gators. And Florida is really interesting because the weekend he is going there, April 13th, it is going to be a loaded weekend for the Gators. And something I love, something I talk about all the time, if you're not new to the channel, you've probably heard me say it. Whenever we talk about these massive recruiting weekends, I love whenever your 5-star quarterback or whenever your blue chip quarterback shows up and is recruiting the masses. I just absolutely love that. Look, recruiting is all about relationships. That is the name of the game. You can develop at an elite level. You can have a great NIL facility and facilitation. But if you're not fostering positive relationships, it's going to be hard for you to consistently recruit. And the reason why I love whenever your blue chip guys, whenever your leaders in the recruiting class are stepping up and recruiting, it's because they too are now fostering relationships. And Florida's a team, don't be surprised if they recruit at an elite level. I mean, the brand is there. I think Billy Napier is going to turn some things around. I would like him to turn some things around. I'm rooting for him. So really interested to see what the Florida Gators are going to be able to do. In our final two teams, we have Colorado, where he will be visiting April 22nd. And remember that date. If you watched the videos yesterday, you probably already know where this is going. April 22nd is Colorado's spring game. And the reason this is so important is because there are several spring games being played on April 22nd. Colorado's is being played on live TV. Oklahoma's will be streamed. Alabama's will be streamed. Yet Colorado's is the one that's going to be on live TV. Why? Because intrigue is at an all-time high for the Colorado Buffaloes. Whether you want Coach Prime to succeed, you're going to be watching. Whether you're like myself and you're just so excited to see what he's going to be able to do, you're going to be watching. Or if you find yourself in the camp that you just flat out don't believe in Coach Prime, well, guess what? You too will still be watching. The common theme? Everybody will be watching April 22nd to see what this Colorado spring game looks like. And Colin Simmons is set to be in attendance. That right there is powerful. Now, I talked about this the other day. Whenever it comes to Colorado and Coach Prime, what you're hoping is that Coach Prime gets these recruits through the door, and whenever they exit, they leave impressed not only with Coach Prime, but the entire staff. Because I think he's put together a really solid staff there, and I'm interested to see how it's going to help them win recruiting battles. And Colin Simmons would be as big of a win as they could possibly have in the 2024 class. And finally, we need to talk about LSU, a team that recruits at such a high level every single year, and they're coming off of a year where they did much better than many pundits expected, including myself. Going into next year, this LSU team retains some talent, and if they continue trending in the right direction, well, it's going to be tough for them to lose on a battle for a Colin Simmons if they're able to continue going in the right direction. We know what LSU does. We know what they do recruiting. I don't need to sit here on my soapbox and tell you all. Look at the history of what they've been able to do. Brian Kelly has this team in an interesting position because Brian Kelly is one of the few teams in college football that can actually look around and say, I have been to a college football playoff game. More than one occasion. Now, we can then sit there and talk about how, yes, when you got there, you got the doors blown off, but it doesn't matter. He made it to the dance, and this is a point I really hit home on every time we talk about it, and I'm sorry this video is getting long, and we're going to end it on this point. But I break down this point every single time we start talking about the college football playoffs. There are teams that have made it that have gotten the doors blown off of them, but guess what? They made the dance. A dance that is proving incredibly difficult to make it to. You want to know why it's proving difficult? Because you see the same few teams every single year in it. You do not have a whole lot of parity in this college football playoff. And while expanding the college football playoff will inevitably add more parity, I don't think it's going to do anything to stop those same few teams from still running this whole thing. Why? It's because they evolved. They saw a team in Alabama that was at the top, and they said, okay, well, instead of just waiting for their reign to end, we're going to evolve and beat them. Then you have Georgia. You have Dabo. You have Ryan Day and Ohio State. All teams making it consistently to the college football playoffs. That's impressive. And now you have a coach that was making it to the college football playoff with Notre Dame and then getting blown out, but still making it with LSU and their capabilities in recruiting. And we all know what that looks like. So LSU is a team we have got to watch, but I can't wait to hear from all of you. I'm sorry this video got a little long, but what are you going to do? Talking college football recruiting, and y'all know me at this point. I love this stuff. So What are you going to do? Colin Simmons, a player we have absolutely got to watch as his process continues to unfold, and an absolute monster on the gridiron. This is a guy I cannot wait to see where he ends up going. Hop down to the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.